We're going to be installing some rear pads on an E36. We have a rock here, and that's going to prevent the tires from moving. You do want to chock the opposite side from you're working on. We have the right rear up in the air. We have it at the lift point, and we're going to go ahead and zip the tire off. You have a decent lip on the rotor, a little bit of rust. Well, the pads are definitely worn. I don't know if you can see that right there. And the pad sensor, now on a E36, the sensors are located in the left front and the right rear. You can see the sensor's actually missing here, and it's actually tied up underneath. And basically that's just not going to trip off to let you know when your brakes are due. But routing it is going to be from this clip here and then up the back, and then it's installed underneath that cover right there. Something my buddy just noted too, that the rear spring is broken right there, just like what we see on E46s and X3s. That's kind of a common problem, the bottom coil breaks off.
Okay, just as before on the front pads, we want to make sure we lubricate all the contact points on the brake pad where it's going to contact the caliper, so it has freedom of movement. So we're using a copper anti-seize compound on all the contact points so it will slide easily on both the inboard and the outboard pads. Again, you don't want to get this on the friction surface, or you'll have to get new pads. Because after all, it is a lubricant, and you don't want your brakes to slip. You want some friction there so you can stop the vehicle. First thing we do, just like on the fronts, you want to remove the retaining spring. So use the existing rotor as leverage to kind of pry up on the spring and get the hook out of the hole, and you can kind of ease it out. Same on the front, might give you a bit of trouble coming out, but you can usually manipulate that out without too much effort. Then stick your pry bar or a large screwdriver in here and pry out, or actually compress the piston into the caliper with the brake pad, like so. And then we'll check it again once it's all the way out. Then you want to take your dust covers off the back, like so. There's two dust covers that house the sliders, where the sliders go in, like so. Take those out, and take your 7mm Allen, loosen both the slider bolts. One. So now your sliders are both out of the way. You can just manipulate the caliper off of the back rotor and pull your pads out accordingly. And yeah, I think these are due. Now, just like on the front caliper, you want to position the old pad in front of the piston and then grab it with some slip joint pliers or something equivalent and grab the whole body of the caliper and squeeze the piston all the way into the caliper like so. Once that's done, you can fit your new brake pads into the piston.
The caliper bracket is still a 16 millimeter. Feels a little loose. It might be a 15 back here. If you were going to take the rotors off, you just remove the caliper bracket. And remember, you have that Allen locator tab. Looks like those clips are a little tight back here. There we go.
There we go. That will fit on there like so. Oh, looks like I gotta. Now we've mounted the outboard pad and the inboard pad, and slide the whole assembly back onto the brake plate. Remember to pull your sliders out, check them. If they have corrosion, clean them up with a wire brush real quickly. Usually do this lengthwise. Be careful doing it this way because it's a wire brush and your fingers are right there. So just clean those up a little bit.
These sliders look like they're in a lot better shape than the front ones.
That's for sure.
This is a stock caliper back here.
Yep.
As opposed to aftermarket caliper in the front.
Then we'll put a little bit of anti-seize on there for insurance, just to make sure they slide easily. And then slide those right back into the caliper. Line them up with the holes in the brake pad plate.
Now keep in mind, if you are replacing the rotor at the same time, you have your set screw that you're going to take off, but also you have to make sure that your e-brake is not actuated, because you'll never get them off. Your internal e-brake will basically hold that rotor on with the internal drum, and you'll be trying to get that rotor off and maybe even damage something or pull your e-brakes apart. So if you do that, make sure your e-brake is not engaged.
You always want to start these pins manually, because you don't want to cross thread them. That's a whole nother project.
Seen too many people do that, trying to zip them on fast. You always want to start them by hand, absolutely. Same thing with your wheel lugs. People think they can zip them on fast because they have air. Most of the time you'll never have a problem, but the one time that you do, it'll turn into a nightmare real fast.
You'll never do it by air again.
You really only have to catch a couple of threads before you switch over to air if you do have it. But those threads are definitely worth it.
And then snug them both up. Put your dust covers back on. They just squeeze right into those little rubber boots. And put your brake pad retaining clip back on. Same as before, make sure these tabs line up with the plate. And you can push against them to snap that spring right back into those two holes.
What happens if that spring's left off?
If you leave the spring left off, you're going to have excess brake pad noise from vibration. And you could have rattles as well.
And one side could wear faster than the other.
Absolutely.
I believe the torque spec on these might be 140 to 160 Newton meters.
Sounds about right. What does that equate to in foot-pounds?
I think it's about 90 to 110 or
Yeah.
120.
Now, mind you, you always want to try to torque fasteners, but in cases like this where you don't have a torque wrench handy.
And you've been doing it for a while.
Yes. And you've been doing it for a while. There we go.